the last section of our training, I'm going to spend this time talking about best practices and walking you through the different components that make up your Mural web browser and talk about your Mural license and your Mural dashboard. So let's start with talking about collaborators. There are different kind of collaborators that you can have in Mural. This is really nice because not everyone needs a Mural license to be able to effectively contribute to a Mural board. So there's 3 kinds of users. You have an owner of a Mural board, so that's going to be whoever created the Mural board, the original creator. You'll have a facilitator. So this is somebody who either created this board or someone has added them as a facilitator to a board that they created. Both an owner and a facilitator are both Mural license holders. The last type of contributor is a visitor. A visitor is somebody who does not have a Mural license and is given access to a Mural board by a Mural owner or somebody with a Mural license. And they can do a lot of different things. All the elements that you've learned about in this training on the black toolbar are available to them. They do have some restricted access that the facilitator and owner have. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. How you know if you're a facilitator is if you have this star next to your either name or face or whatever you put as your icon. So down here, you'll see that I have a star next to my face. That means that I am the facilitator of this board. This is where you'll find all your participants. So if we had many different people in this board, you would see a series of different faces and names and potentially little animals. So you'll see that the visitor has an animal as its avatar. This is always going to be the case. If you do not have a Mural license, you are going to come in as some type of visiting animal. Now, visitors do have the option to type in their name so that you know who are the visiting animals, but it's not required. You can also change a license holder to becoming a facilitator. So in this example, I was the Mural owner and Aisha was a collaborator on my board and I wanted to add her as a facilitator. So you come up here, and since there's only me in this board, I can't quite show you all of it, but Aisha's face would pop up like it does here. You would click down and then can facilitate. So in this area, I would just select can facilitate, and then Aisha has all the facilitator accesses to this board, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. This is where you'll see all of the different users that are in your board. Only your Mural license holders are going to appear there. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do with a Mural license that visitors and folks without a license just can't do. So the first thing is you can invite other collaborators. The way that you do this is you come up here to the share button and click it, and then you'll add other people to your board. You can only add members to your board if they're part of your workspace. At ICF, each of our workspaces is divided up by the operating group that we're a part of. Now, you can have access to as many of the workspaces as you like, but by default, you're going to have access to your operating group. And then I would just hit send, and an invitation would go to Aisha. I could also copy this link and just paste it into maybe a Teams chat or an email, and she can visit it that way as well. If you use the web browser link, it can work for somebody who is a Mural license holder, but it will not work for a visitor. The way that you invite a visitor is slightly different. So you come up here to the share button and you click on the visitor link. This is going to generate a link that allows folks without a Mural license to join your Mural board as a visiting animal. So you'd copy your link, put it in a chat or an email, and they can meet you in there. Typically what I do is I start my meetings in Teams, and then I post the link in the chat and have everybody meet me in the Mural board. I want to show you a few other options you have when you're sharing with visitors. So when you are sharing with members, that means a license holder, you can actually just share a view only option. It's the same thing with your visitors. So let's say you just had a workshop with your client and you finalized everything, but your client wants to continue to have access to it. After the workshop's done, you could just hit view only, share the link with them, and then they always have access, but they won't mess with anything. For another level of security, you can add a password. And so then you would need to give the password to whoever you would like to use the board. You can also reset the link so that anyone that had access to the board will not without this new link. Another option that Mural users have is to export a Mural board. This is a really great feature because at the end of a workshop, you no longer need to create a workshop synthesis or a deliverable. You all just co-created the next steps. You co-created what you would put in that deliverable. So maybe it's just about cleaning up your board and exporting it and sharing it out. So if you come up here to the right-hand corner and you see this down arrow icon, if you click on that, you'll have all these different options of how to export your board. Typically, I will export to a PDF and it will show up in my email in just a few minutes. You can also export just areas of a board and not the entire board. So if you have a very large board, the PDF may be really small. If you want to just export a part of your board, you will have to create an area. So if I select all of this, you'll know it's selected because I have the blue outline, and I right click and select organize into area. That will create an area. I don't want a title, so I will just come down here to turn off the title. And now this is an area. So I can click on this again, right click, and now I can export an area, which will send me a PDF of just this area. You most likely are going to do this over a single exercise, or maybe you break the board up into quadrants, but a really nice feature that Mural has. Another feature Mural license holders have available to them is being able to duplicate someone else's board. So if you've ever been in a scenario where you are collaborating in someone's board and you're like, wow, this is a great board, I wish I could use components of this, or I'd love to just use this whole structure, you can actually duplicate it without messing with that person's board or them even knowing at all. The way you do that is come up here to the title. This is also how you edit the title. You just click in there and click this caret down here. You're going to hit duplicate mural. It's going to ask you what you want to name it, and then which workspace you're a part of and where you want to send it. I always send it to my room because that's always where my personal murals go. So then hit duplicate and it will create its own version of this board, but one that I can do whatever I'd like with it. So this is a really great feature. I love this as well. There's also a few other things you can do in here, like publish as a template or go to the mural settings itself. These are some advanced features where you could really change the size of your mural board, or you could change the background color. Let's say you'd like it to be gray, so it just changed the board itself. Lastly, I want to talk about facilitation superpowers. This is one of the biggest differences between having a mural license and not. I typically recommend anyone that is going to be building mural boards and or facilitating a mural should have a mural license. The reason for that is being a facilitator, you have a lot of built-in features available to you. So let's walk through some of them. The first thing I want to point out is the different options you have when you click on your own avatar. Because I don't have anybody in this board with me, they're not all showing up, but I want to talk through the different options. So the first option here is ask to be followed. Everyone has access to that. Any visitor or other license holder on the board can ask to be followed. What happens is a pop-up happens that says this person would like you to follow them, and then you can click yes or no. But the biggest difference that a facilitator has is the summon button, and this is a very important button because you can select the summon button and it takes all the participants and immediately gives them your view. As a facilitator, this is a really, really helpful tool. It can really help orient folks if people are lost or they're not sure where to be, and you can also quickly move people along. The summon button is something facilitators use in almost every single workshop. The other thing I want to point out here that isn't related to facilitator superpowers, but is a nice thing to point out, is that you may have a lot of people in your mural board and there are a ton of icons moving around and you can see everybody's pointer. You can ask everybody to unselect broadcast my cursor and that will hide it for everyone. Let's talk about some other features you have available to you. So up here at the top, you have a voting session, a private mode, and timer. The timer is super nice because you may have an exercise that you want to spend only 20 minutes on, or maybe you're doing a series of quick presentations where everyone has 5 minutes. A timer is a great way to just politely move on the conversation and let everybody know how much time is left in an exercise or maybe in your meeting together. So a lot of different options. You can pause your timer, you can add a minute to it, you can end the timer, and that little bell goes off whenever your timer is up. You'll also get a notification when 1 minute is left. Everyone who is in the board will get that notification, and everyone will also hear the bell when the time is up. Private mode is a new feature that we are still exploring, so I don't necessarily have best practices for, but happy to share what I know about it. When you go into it, you can create post-it notes or create anything really, and no one sees what you're doing during private mode. But when you end private mode, everything that you have done will then become public. So once we have some best practices on when and how to use that and what we're using it for, we'll be sure to share that in the Teams community. One of my favorite features is the voting session. So if you've ever been in person where we have sticky notes and voting dots, that's a pretty hard experience to recreate. And I think Mural not only has recreated it, but I think they've actually done it better. Voting is a great exercise because it can really democratize the decision-making process. And with Mural, it's even more anonymous than it was in person. It's super simple to do, but it's really important as a facilitator that you're giving directions, because the voting session itself does not create parameters around it. I'll show you what I mean. So to start a voting session, I'll hit start. You'll want to name your voting session and then however many votes you want to give people. So let's say we want to give people 4. Since it's just me and this board, this won't be as dramatic of a reveal, but fun nonetheless. So now I have this pop-up that says begin voting. This is what the experience will be like for all participants as well. The way that you vote is click on a post-it note, and when you do that, you get a little red dot with the number of votes you've then put on it. I can vote on it again, and you'll see a number 2 pop up. But what's really important here is that you have to really tell your participants what they're voting on. So if I want to take away this vote, I just hit shift and click on it. Now we're just voting on these solution ideas. But if I'm not very clear, someone could maybe vote on, let's say, this image over here, and it creates a vote. This can really skew your results because you have folks voting on different elements that aren't actually part of the prioritization process. So what I always do before I start a voting session is let everybody know, hey everyone, this is what we're voting on. This is what we're going to be doing with the prioritized notes. And please make sure you're only voting on the yellow stickies in this area. Usually if you make sure all the colors are the same, you can just use color as a reference. Up here in the right hand, I'm going to end the voting session, and then this results page will show up. Now, of course, when there's 6 more people in the workshop, there's many more ideas that come up and is much greater of a reveal, but this is a really nice recap page that everyone sees. So you'll see the note that I voted twice on, and then the other ones showing a clear winner. You'll also see the unique voters. And what's really nice is you don't know how other people voted. Now you really have an anonymous prioritization process, and then you can have a really great conversation. The other thing I really like is that you now have the votes on the sticky notes. So I can move these around, and I know that this was always my top voted idea, this was my second voted idea, and these guys weren't voted on. And one of the last but fun features is the celebrate button. So I can come over here to my avatar and hit celebrate.